Hello and welcome back. Let's talk about ensemble learning. We start with the concept of a weak learner. So for example, this is a machine learning classifier with mediocre performance and known weaknesses. They may be easy to set up and train, but they have known limitations. One example we've encountered previously was a single decision tree that was easy to understand in principle and also at least in principle easy to train, but we've already seen that there are a number of issues with it. So how can we start to mitigate those? Well, we took many of them. We move from a weak learner to an ensemble of learners. So that means that we combine multiple versions of variants and algorithms, and such an ensemble predictor is then very powerful. We can combine several weak learners, for example with a majority vote in terms of classification or the mean of the results in terms of regression. One approach we can follow is so-called bagging. There we train multiple algorithms on subset and combine them as an ensemble. We can use this for data. For example, we create n different variations of the training data set and take an element on the data set and put it into a new bag. And we put the element back into the original bag and we repeat until we have the same number of elements in those two bags. That means, of course, that now each element can occur multiple times in the new bag. So why would we want to do this? Many of the especially simple algorithms are prone to overtraining. So we want to avoid that a single algorithm sees the whole data. So this is why we create multiple variations of the data. And because each algorithm sees a slightly different view of the data we have, none of them can learn all the aspects of the data by heart, so to speak. So no single algorithm sees the whole data. If you combine the whole ensemble, we still get all data used in the training of our methods, but because each member of the ensemble hasn't seen everything, they cannot possibly learn all features of the data by heart. We can also do the same thing with features, really. We don't need to limit ourselves to data, we can also do this with the variables. So here is what we call feature bagging, and we train multiple algorithm subset and then combine them as an ensemble, as we did before, but now for features. This is also called the random subspace method. So we create n different variations of the features and put them into a new bag and put the element back and so on, and now the features can occur multiple times. This also helps to reduce overtraining because no single algorithm sees the whole set of features. You can also, of course, combine the two approaches. One example is the random forest, where we can combine both approaches. We do the bagging for the data, so we have multiple copies of the data, but they are all slightly different variations, and we can also do feature bagging. And then we do many decision trees, and that is essentially what's called a random forest. And this makes it much more stable and much more robust against overtraining, but also because we have so many variations of the features and the data and different combinations of the classifier, the underlying one, the decision tree, we're also much less prone to the effect that starting with a different variable then the next tree will give slightly different results, because essentially we cover all the combinations. Boosting is yet a different approach. So far we've combined many weak learners in an ensemble. We can also improve on the prediction a weak learner makes. And this is called boosting. Here we start with a weak learner, and now we identify where this weak learner makes a wrong prediction. And now we sort of chain a new learner in the chain and say, okay, based on the prediction and the true labels, learn a correction to the previous one. And we can, of course, do this several times. So here in the end we have a chain rather than an ensemble of weak learners, and each of them corrects the mistakes the previous one has made. And the idea is then, of course, that by the end we have a long enough chain that the last element of this chain will compensate for all the mistakes that have been done previously. Here, this can also be combined with decision trees, and these are these modern boosted decision trees They are very powerful for tabular and structured data, and they pretty much deliver good performance out of the box without a lot of tuning. They do have the disadvantage that they're not very explainable, but for most cases when you do have structured data, they are like the go-to method, and there are popular implementations like X3Boost, LightGBM or CatBoost. And if you have tabular data, really the best thing you can do is to just try one of those and see where this lands you. And most of the time you don't really need to improve by elaborate model building on those.